Good. How is our new Speaker of the House so far?
Mike's been doing a good job. Like, we got 2 weeks of data. The first big thing he did was isolating Israel, making sure we pass it standalone, and then using the expansion of the Internal Revenue Service and take $14.5 billion out of that pot of money, about 70-something billion sitting over there,
pay for it,
and use that to pay for Israel. And, of course, our Democratic colleagues are choosing the IRS over Israel.
Right.
Fortunately, 12 of them didn't, but we got to keep going down that road. That was the right approach by Speaker Johnson. We got to encourage that. And now, as we're dealing with the spending issues, the so-called CR debate, continuing resolution, we got to hold the line. And that's the message we're sending to Mike this week, that we love him, love what he did on the IRS in Israel.
That's one.
Now game time on the spending bills, and we need to fight.
Yeah, we're in deep trouble with the spending, as you know, and the securing of our border. Nothing is happening there. Biden said he was willing to, secure our border. It shows he has absolutely no care in the world for the damage that is being done to our republic.
Well, Glenn, you're 100% correct, and we've talked about this on your show. What's happening is totally indefensible, and you know that, and I know that, and every American knows that. The number of people who've come in, the amount of fentanyl, the amount of deaths, the amount of danger the Texans were put in, the impact on our economy, the $10 billion we've had to spend in Texas to do the job of the federal government. So we've got to do something about the border. Now, the current thinking in this town is that we need to leverage Ukraine in order to force border security. Now, the problem is, and I'm sure you're going to agree, well, that accepts the premise of Ukraine in the first place.
Yes.
So what we're trying to fight through right now is what debate do we need to have about whether any more money to Ukraine is acceptable or defensible, right? And so that's kind of a conditioned precedent we have to establish. And so we're trying to force that conversation, transparency, where the money's going to go, how it's used. Is it in our national security interest? And if so, is it enough of that to then warrant using it as a kind of, leverage point to force border security? So here's a hypothetical. We tell the Democrats, look, your whole lives depend apparently on funding another country's proxy war. So, okay, you want to do that. So let's say $36 billion over 12 months. I mean, this is hypothetical, Glenn. I'm not advocating this. If you do that and we say $3 billion a month, provided, however, there are no releases of any individuals into the United States, period. And then we'll dole out that $3 billion as a way to leverage and force Biden, who has no interest in following the law. So we pass H.R. 2, force him to sign it, and then we dole out some dollars and say, look, we're going to hold you accountable to this. Now, that's a hypothetical that we're discussing, and we might do that. But for me, the question before us right now is we got this funding of government question coming up, and I just want to ask you and the people listening to your show, do you think that I, as an elected member of Congress, should agree to continue funding at the Nancy Pelosi spending levels of last December?
No.
And keep funding DHS and keep funding Mayorkas and keep funding the United Nations and keep funding UNRWA and keep funding a DOJ weaponized against the American people?
No.
In order to give time for appropriations bills to get negotiated? My answer to that is no. You've got to give me cuts. You've got to give me something in order to buy more time to pass the appropriations bills. I'm glad we've passed 7 appropriations bills. It's better than previous Congresses, but so what? Until they get signed into law changing policies and cutting spending, then it's not doing the American people any good.
No.
So for me, I'm not going to vote for a so-called clean CR. And that's what's being floated. And some of the people in this town are trying to pressure Mike to agree to a clean CR. And I just flat out disagree with it, and I'm going to fight it.
Yeah, Chip, just the interest rate alone at what we are borrowing things at now continues to go up. We, by 2030 or 2033, we will be able to pay for Social Security and interest alone. Not the light bills, not any perk, nothing. Just Social Security, what we've promised, and interest. No war machine. What the hell is wrong with people in Washington? What do they think is going to happen?
A 1% increase in interest rates increases our total interest load about $180 billion. Think about that, Glenn. And that's what we're doing.
Well, I recommend you have a hard spine here. I don't think that there is any reason to not go back to the spending levels of 2019 before the emergencies. There's no reason. None. Can you give me one?
No, Glenn, look, I'm with you. And so I will give this a little bit of grace because it's important. Mike's come on the job. He's been here 2 weeks, setting up his team. His first shot out of the gate was a good one.
Yep.
IRS funding for Israel.
Yep.
I'm trying to help set the stage for the next steps. And I'm sorry, I'm walking over to meet with Mike, so you're getting some echoing in the hallway. But look, my pressure point here is you got to change this town. You give me something that I can sink my teeth into. For example, fine, you want an extension of the current funding levels in order to buy time to get appropriations bills passed? Okay. But I want the disaster aid that we already passed by by unanimous consent or whatever. When we voted for it a few weeks ago, we passed a disaster supplemental that was unpaid for, $16 billion. I want to see Israel get done paid for. That's $30 billion that we will save. And I want to see a serious and concrete path for getting the appropriations bills passed in December. You give me all that, now you're in the zip code of something I can listen to. But what about capping the so-called Inflation Reduction Act subsidies that are destroying the American economy? What about other changes that we should do to force spending down and to free up the American people to create wealth? What about border security? So these are the things I'm raising. Do not ask me to continue to fund the government that's killing my people, that's at war with the people that I represent, because I can't do that.
So, Chip, I gotta throw another log on the fire here for you. I'm sorry to do this because I know you're so bogged down with everything else. But there's a story that came out yesterday about the FCC, and we've talked to the commissioner of FCC, and it is the most far-reaching administrative state power grab in the history of technology. They're passing it next Tuesday. It's all but done. It will take centrist Republicans to try to convince them to back off on this, but it's 3-2 for the Democrats in the vote next week. And it gives the administration total control over everything, all expansion, all infrastructure, all rates, everything under the FCC, and that happens Tuesday.
So you're right. That's a log on the fire. I could give you about 20 logs on the fire.
I know.
Right now the deposition is going on for Weiss. What we're seeing in terms of the Biden situation and Hunter Biden and the president and the family of corruption. We could go down the list of the things that are happening right now with ATF and the exertion of their authority over the American people, the prohibition of distributing weapons to people around the world and helping people, the extent to which they're clamping down. The FCC, what you're just talking about right there, we've got, there's a litany of things, which goes to my point about the paying for us funding a federal bureaucracy that's at war with the people we represent, Glenn. So that's the question here. Look, I said it at the mic in front of Republicans this morning in conference. I don't talk about private meetings very much, so I'm not going to say what other people said, but I will tell you what I said, which was, how on earth can we justify spending at the current level, that is last year's Nancy Pelosi levels, that 17 Republican senators joined with to pass? The rest of us opposed it. We all opposed it violently, and now we're just going to vote for it. Again, you're going to vote to perpetuate it. You're going to do that for 2 years. We're going to spend and fund a DHS that is leaving our border wide open, an IRS that's expanded and going after citizens, a DOJ that is weaponized and going after the American people, the FCC you just described, an ATF that's targeting the American people. We're going to fund UNRWA, right, which is funding Palestinians who are at war with the people of Israel. We're going to fund the United Nations that just voted against Israel and in favor of Hamas.
USAID.
In what universe would we do that?
Not in any sane universe.